This is my first time here at AREI-AREDAY, and I definitely want to thank Sally and Chip for inviting me, as well as all the warriors out there for this planet. I know many of you, but it's amazing to be, I'm humbled just to be here amongst you all. I also sit, I'm not just an explorer, I am an ambassador for Global Green USA. I'm also an ambassador for Protect Our Winters, as well as Winter Wildlands Alliance, so I'm involved in environmental impacts of our ski areas and our mountains and our public lands as well. I've been traveling to the polar regions, both North and South Pole, quite a bit the last 20 years. 16 visits to the South Pole, 16 visits to the North Pole, and I'm truly a skier is what I am. I ski all over the world, and it really started as a skier, but I really wanted to know how I can inspire other people. So what I did is I ended up starting Ice Axe Expeditions, which is a ski touring company, and we do trips all over the planet: Antarctica, Svalbard, Greenland, Iceland, Morocco, Kamchatka, Kashmir, India, Alaska, Chile, all over the planet. So it's something that I love doing, but within these trips, I started to see differences in the environment, and that's really where it takes me today. My dream started climbing the highest peak of Antarctica, which was the Vinson Massif, 16,077 feet. There's no living animals or anybody living there. It's quite a barren environment. They get about 12 inches of snow a year. It is in the interior, in the Ellsworth mountain range. And I wanted to go with a couple friends and ski the highest peak and do the first ski and snowboard descent. So in 1999, I went there and were able to ski off the summit of Vinson Massif. What I didn't realize is usually they get 12 inches of snow a year. Well, we got hit with a 30-centimeter storm, so we were skiing boot deep powder. And as I kept on returning to Antarctica, I kept on seeing more and more abnormal weather. So I'm seeing more and more snow. About 8 months after that first trip, actually 2 months after that first trip, I chartered a Russian research vessel and went down to the Antarctic Peninsula to see a different part of Antarctica because I fell in love with the continent. And I saw millions of penguins, thousands of seals, and hundreds of whales, and was blown away by Antarctica in general. 6 months after that second trip, I guided a blind man and a deaf man 787 miles across the continent. So I learned a lot about myself on this journey, not only to take a blind man. I think the first 5 minutes of the trip, I had a bell on the back of my sled, and I thought Miles Hilton Barber, the blind gentleman, could just follow the bell. Well, within the first 5 minutes, the winds were so strong he couldn't hear the bell, and I looked behind me, and Miles is skiing off into the abyss, and I had to unhook myself from the sled and go chase him down. So that wasn't going to work. But we did. We crossed Antarctica. It took us 62 days unsupported, and it was quite an adventure. But it led me to some other things where I learned a lot about Antarctica. I've led 4 crossings of Antarctica. Most of them were from sort of the Rhone ice shelf in that area. I did recreate Ernest Shackleton's intended route of 1914 through 1916, which was an amazing 47-day unsupported trip. I've taken handicapped people last December 500 miles from the coast to the pole. So I like to raise money for charities. I won't take anybody unless we're raising money for charity or we're doing science work. So that's one of the things that it's really, really important to me. It just shows you the map of Antarctica. I didn't fly in like the turn of the century explorers. I read all the books as a child, but nowadays you can fly in by aircraft, a big, huge Aleutian Russian aircraft, and land on an ice runway and be completely safe, usually from Punta Arenas, Chile, and also you can fly in from Cape Town, South Africa. And so you land on this runway, and then you take a ski-equipped plane from there to your destination, wherever that may be. I tell the base camp manager I want to be dropped off over here. But then the trip starts, and we climb 9,300 feet to the polar plateau, and it's not flat. It's usually an upward hill all the way, and there's all kinds of crevasses. I fell into 4 different crevasses redoing the Shackleton route up to my chest and had to extract myself. There's also undulations as well. I see all kinds of precious metals and stones. I've seen a 7-pound meteorite that I walked by. and don't want to put it in my sled. I'm trying to get weight out of my sled each day, but end up putting it in. But there's a lot of whiteout conditions, and navigation is very, very important. And even the person who has more experience than anybody, I still make mistakes. One day I was skiing and I had to lift my goggles up because of basically they were completely frozen shut, and I got what's called snow blindness. So I wasn't able to see. About 3 days prior to this accident, I was chewing on a piece of chocolate and broke one of my molars and had to pull it out with a needle nose plier. So even someone who has a lot of experience still has, makes mistakes. Finally gets to the pole, and I wanted to show you a picture of the South Pole. They usually have a medallion there, and the actual ice sheet is moving about 30 feet a year. But they built this base. The first base was built in 1949, which it's synonymous with the South Pole, the big dome. But they built this base and finished it in 2005. And it's a $475 million base of our taxpayer money, and they are doing great science there. But you think of scientists and you think about a base, and you say, why are they bringing 443 flights of fuel in to man this base and run this base for 256 people in the summer months and 52 in the winter? And every base in Antarctica is fossil fuel driven. It doesn't make any sense. So they have 24/7 for 6 months a year of sun. They also have wind every day. Katabatic winds could be a huge asset. So saying that, I started a company called Intrepid Resource Management, and I'm going to an old Russian base, it's still running today, in the Antarctic Peninsula, and I'm doing a 3-step process. I'm going and cleaning up some of the oil reservoirs that are leaking oil into the Antarctic Ocean, and I'm also collecting scrap metal. And then from there, I'm also recycling the metal on the second process, and then getting all the bases down there on renewables, wind and solar. So that's one of the projects I'm working on. I also take handicapped people. I probably raised close to $20 million in charities. This last December, we raised $860,000 for childhood cancer. I also do science work. I collect isotope readings in the South Pole with an 18-year-old I took from the coast of the pole as well. We did core samples. We're finding a lot about climate change through core samples down there as well. This is the 18-year-old Parker, and now he's working in a government position in Washington, D.C. for climate change. I use solar panels, and I use these satellite communicators to talk to schools. And this is really important to me to educate our youth about what's going on. So I take basically my BGAN satellite communicator to the Antarctic Peninsula, and I go and I do live feeds into classrooms and talk about the penguins that we're seeing and what's happening. I also do that in the Amazon, and I talk to students about what's happening with the Amazon, the hydroelectric plants, the deforestation, also the wildlife. I also do trips up in northern Canada in the Nunavut areas too, to be able to educate these youth about what's happening with our planet. I also go to schools around the US and Canada talking about what's happening and about our planet, and also to set up some of these talks. Here's a picture of the Arctic Ocean. A lot of people don't realize that majority of the whole right side is all Siberia. And then in the bottom, you have a couple islands, Svalbard, and then you have the big island, Greenland, which is 80% ice. And then you have northern Canada on the left-hand side around 9 o'clock, and then Alaska. You can now ski through, or actually sail through the Northwest Passage in about 3 months. 100 years ago, it took Amundsen 3 years. The reason I'm showing you this thing is the ice is melting up there. I left from Siberia in 2005 on an international climate change expedition called Pole Track. And I didn't want to go and just beat my chest and say, hey, I made it to the North Pole or I made it to the summit. I wanted to do something for humanity. So I went to the scientists and I said, how can I help you? And they handed me a 50-pound box, which was basically a weather station. And they were dropping these boxes out of an aircraft. And I said, hey, let me take a look. You guys don't know me, but I cut my labels out of my clothing. I cut my toothbrush in half. I weigh every gram that I take on these trips. So there was no way I was going to take a 50-pound box. So what I did is I redesigned these beacons to weigh about 6 pounds. And these beacons actually are all carbon fiber tubing. They do temperature, barometric pressure, and most importantly, they track the ice up to 10 years. I built 3 of them with my own money, and I placed 3 of them on the ice, and 2 of them are still working today. So, you know, it's funny how things happen this way, and they're more accurate than the ones they were using. So now the Arctic Buoy program is using, which is about 16 nations, is using a beacon I designed. I also did snow depth measurements, and I still remain and do snow depth and ice depth measurements on the Arctic Ocean. I was just up there in April. This is what the Arctic Ocean is. It's a much different environment than the Antarctic. It's moving ice, constantly shifting, wind and current pushing the ice together to pressure ridges, but there's a lot of open water. I was alarmed this year. Every year I go up and I'm thinking, how am I going to do it this year? I hope that there's ice there that I can make it. And I'm seeing. And this year it wasn't just single and double year ice that I'm seeing. This ice, there was a storm about 2 weeks prior to my trip, and I'm seeing ice that was really just a week and a half old. And it made it easy for me to get to the North Pole because very new ice, I could see it flex in front of me. It was only 1.5 inches thick. So it was easy for me to get to the pole, but scary, scary, scary. Because all that 2-week-old ice will melt this summer, and it'll be open water, and it'll be absorbed by the sun. It will be heated up. We need that ice up there for reflectivity, and called albedo. So this is pretty fresh ice, pretty much what I was going across this about a month ago. You see those those crystals. It's really the salt evaporating. There's also polar bears up there. So this isn't a whole nother thing. I feel like we don't belong there. They're just, they usually are around the coast. And in my 20 years of going up there, they've only been going about 100 to 200 miles off the coast of the land, look for seals is what they eat, and then they usually go back. The last couple years I've been seeing polar bears all the way at the North Pole, which is 600 miles. On that trip for Pole Track, it took me, it was 600 miles, and we did it in 52 days, unsupported. So yeah, the polar bears are really interesting. I could talk about those for about another 15 or 20 minutes. This is what they eat for seals, but this is some of the rubbled terrain that you have to go across. This is near Canada. So what's happening is all that multi-year ice is pushed down to the Baffin Straits and near Canada and Greenland. So this is all where this ice is going, and it's 150 miles of water up near Siberia. So this is what it looks like. It's quite difficult to ski through, and a lot of time we have to jump, and sometimes we even have to swim. I was swimming probably 12 times a day in the open water. And then you just put a rope to your sled and pull that across. It was always sort of sketchy because this is when the polar bears, they're really fast. They can run 40 miles an hour, and they swim faster than me. But we use everybody as a team. And, it's just one thing. I stand here not as a scientist, but more as an observer and an impassioned human being. It's important for all of us to do so much more. Without the 2 poles, we have no planet. So I just wanted so please, if you ever want to join me on any adventures, I'm happy to help out and get you there. I'd love to take all our politicians up to the North Pole and really show them what's going on. So if you have any, I could take a couple questions. I think I only have about a minute. Go ahead.
I'm speechless and so proud of you for being here with us and sharing this remarkable, remarkable journey. I'm sure everyone in this world wants to continue to support you. I'm also doing film and media, and however we can empower this through AREDAY and all our partners, I'm speechless, and that doesn't ever happen to me.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm truly humbled in this whole group, and you guys are all certainly warriors of the planet, and you guys are doing everything you can. And I wake up in the morning, and I want to try to find out ways that I can be helpful. Any other questions? Well, I'll be around. I'm also doing a talk about the Arctic tonight. I think it's the same time as the really cool meeting tonight. I think it's like I'm not sure what's going on tonight, but I think there's something else going on. But if 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to be talking about the Arctic. So if you want to not go to dinner or cut dinner short, come back and we'll be doing another talk. All right? Thank you.